I am Precious Mzea Sakaleji. Welcome to Camnet TV Main News, the headlines. Over 100 girls retrieved from child marriages in NEGA-NEGA. CIZ challenges investigative wings to update the nation on how to resolve corruption cases before them. Central Province UPND boasts of taking over the country because of its good policies. In international news, death every day, fear and fortitude engulf Uganda's EBOLA EPICENTER. And in sports, FAS shortlist 10 for CHIPOLOPOLO job. Details coming through after this commercial.
Are you going in grade 6, 8, 10 or 11 in 2023? Waste no time. Born for Greatness Tuition Center will be opening to the public in Kablonga, Lusaka. Quality and experienced teachers guaranteed. Limited space available. Call and book for your child now on
0962 382535.
Classes are starting on 5th December 2022. Born for Greatness Tuition Center, learning for reigning in life.
And other main news in detail. More than 100 girls between the age of 13 and 17 years old have been retrieved from early marriages in NEGA-NEGA Mazabuka district. In an interview with Camnet TV, Concerned Citizens for Justice and Human Rights Director Richard Nkua says the organization has retrieved 163 girls and child marriages survivors have since been integrated into school. Mr. Nkua has observed that child marriage is a challenge which needs to be addressed as it is one of the things that hinder the attainment of gender equality. Meanwhile, a 14-year-old girl who is among the retrieved girls says her focus is to continue with education despite falling pregnant.
A typical day in the life of a teenage girl in Southern Province, going about her daily chores around the house. One might think there's nothing wrong with this picture, but the tragedy is that this 14-year-old girl of NEGA-NEGA in Mazabuka district was almost forced into marriage after she fell pregnant. At a time when grade 7 pupils had exams in their mind, she, among other girls in her situation, had more grown-up problems to think about. Her boyfriend, who is 19-year-old, impregnated her.
I am 14 years old. I got pregnant during the time that I was about to write my grade 7 exams. I thought of marriage, but I do not want anymore.
The man who impregnated her does not deny the responsibility, however, does not want the matter to be reported to the police. With strong policies that the government has put in place to protect children from forced marriages and other harmful practices, now it's a books, not marriage, that her parents are insisting on.
My daughter is still young. All I want is for her to go back to school.
I have 5 children and she is my third born. We tried to engage the man's family after we discovered she was pregnant, but nothing was solved. With the free education policy, all I want is for my daughter to continue with high education.
Concerned Citizens for Justice and Human Rights have been holding meetings in Nalwama Chiefdom to talk about the dangers. In an interview with Camnet TV, the organization director discloses how many girls have been retrieved.
In the period of 2 weeks, we have managed to retrieve children 163 to date. And out of these cases, we have reported them to the police, we have referred them to the police, and we are continuing sensitizing the community in this area, because what we have discovered here in NEGA-NEGA, we have got the high number of teenage pregnancies and also early marriages. Therefore, we have engaged the stakeholders such as the church and also the traditional leaders.
Traditional leaders across the country are starting to challenge the old customs that seem to be harmful in order to protect children.
Free education njibaga tupa ba government ba UPND. At least amani jiwo zibabola abaguyiha.
We need to have such programs in this chiefdom to sensitize on the dangers of child marriage and teenage pregnancy.
kuzaindi ni bakasiga bankuwa gwiya kubaiya at least twa ndabona kuti guli kujincha guli ko mbubo aguli bamahalanto omwabana.
It is estimated that girls who become pregnant at a tender age are 5 times likely to die while giving birth. It is hoped that such discussion prompts communities globally to protect children against the harmful practice. Miriam Kaimba, reporting for Camnet TV News.
Meanwhile, residents of NEGA-NEGA in Mazabuka district of Southern Province are appealing to relevant authorities to speed up the reconstruction of the police post and have since realized their mistakes in burning it down. Residents have disclosed that the crime levels in the area have increased due to non-operation of the police post, adding that majority of them did not take part in the riot and should not suffer for the consequences of others who burnt it down. NEGA-NEGA police post was gutted by residents in August this year following a protest over a coffin containing the remains of an alleged murder victim whose family refused to bury.
The reconstruction of NEGA-NEGA police station in Mazabuka district remains a pipe dream. The police station was reduced to ashes in August this year by a mob of angry residents following a move by the police to remove a coffin of their loved one from the house of a suspected killer. It is said that pallbearers were allegedly laid by a coffin they carried to an individual suspected of causing the demise of the deceased person. After feeling the pinch of not having a police station, some concerned residents are now calling on relevant authorities to speed up the reconstruction of the police station and have since realized their mistake in burning it down.
Enda vija abantu wangu tukana chema insults mlanda kwa tiwaza wati nangu hivi nitinga chite vindu vo ipisisa pakwati report taking hiyo kwenda kafika pa polisi wakonza kupeza mawezi yo soba so umoyo wa muntu ni chintu chikuru and umoyo wa muntu palibe security. I think somehow mankala ni risk in life. So msanga venchipempa wa government basankale na mtima oipa nangu nkala na chifukisha kwa since wanachitira ko baso bakunenganenga because banachita vija kuno suit maybe ni bantu bonse wali based munenganenga mwatina kusanya na pama.
Residents have disclosed that criminal activities in the area have increased due to non-operation of the police station, adding that majority of them did not take part in the riot.
Nyonga na polisi tubantu tujimapenzi maninga kuti na orobuliza aba tusowa mari usiga buri kumazabuga winka bujoga ngo ete kwacha so buri challenge maniga kuti bantu bari pengede iguti nani jari bugo hega ndiza hurumende ni yatu itarubomba kambo turanganya kuti polisi chibadera jabantu chicheje byo jagarubira bati bantu banji bari pengede so twari kuromba kuti hurumende tujebe kuti turanganya uchita kuti izanga twari kubaga boto kuuromba kutujisibyo nindimeyo ngubakasiyano usoreka kuranganya mayaga but ndibona mburi kuti kuri mapenzi maningi agumini yamburi twambo kambo gumbwa kambo gerera kuti kukwatanda kanjira animbika nitora kumazabuga so kuna humaningi.
By broadcast time, getting a comment from civic leaders in the area proved futile. Government through the Ministry of Finance in partnership with local government ministry is mandated by law to ensure that all constituencies in the 10 provinces are given constituency development funds to subsidize the developmental agenda. At the same time, members of the public are not allowed to take the law into their own hands, as is the case of the people of NEGA-NEGA. Miriam Kaimba, reporting for Camnet TV News.
Transport business in UGANDA'S district of Eastern Province has come to a standstill due to a continued shortage of fuel that has hit the province. A check by Camnet News at some filling stations found long queues, while some motorists spoken to have lamented that they have been on the queues for 2 days without buying the commodity. They have since called on the Ministry of Energy to quickly intervene in the matter.
They say fuel is an economic driver, and without it, businesses would come to a standstill. In Lusaka, motorists are enjoying the benefit of having enough fuel, and transport business is operating smoothly. This, however, is not the case in Lundazi district of Eastern Province, where a shortage of fuel has hit the district. Long queues have characterized all the filling stations, and transport business has literally come to a standstill. The impact of the shortage of fuel is also being felt by businesses in the district as goods are unable to move. A check by Camnet News at some filling stations found long queues, and some motorists interviewed have complained that they have been on a queue for 2 days trying to buy the commodity.
Line yonse kunozoona tevutika pano so tikamba pano tangala 2 days tutoka kuminzi nasiyama tenda tingala 2 days pa line kulimba na fuel vantu vatigwisa ma container toka ku Malawi so sitizo pamene mngatikanizire boma chipempa isolira kuno kulundasi chiro tavutika maningi.
Others have also advised government to urgently intervene in the matter, saying if the problem is not ratified soon, many businesses risk losing out.
Is happening in Zambia is not good. This is Lundazi. As you can see, people they don't have fuel. Past 2 weeks, as you can see, there is motorcycle, motor vehicles, people walking using motorbikes. So the only problem in Zambia, fuel it is more high. We have a shortage of fuel, so we want our government in Zambia, they look into this matter. If it will continue up to now, we reach next year, January, it will be very difficult. People, business, cities stuck because of fuel. We want the government of Zambia to pull up their stock and so that they can make this program to come to an end. The people of Lundazi are complaining. 2 weeks without any program of fuel. People are coming far away from Chama because as you can see Lundazi, Chama people, Chasefu, Lumezi, they are depending on the Lundazi, but they don't have fuel for past 2 weeks.
Meanwhile, efforts to get a comment from Minister in charge of Energy Peter Kapala and his permanent secretary proved futile as their phone went unanswered. For now, these motorists continue to scramble for the commodity. Prudence Chota, reporting for Camnet TV News.
Transparency International Zambia TIZ has challenged investigative wings to update the country on the outcome of cases involving high-profile people that were publicized and later went quiet. In an interview, TIZ Executive Director Maurice Nyambe has cited the case of former First Lady Esther Lungu, who was accused of owing 15 flats in State Lodge area suspected to be proceeds of crime, stating that while the questioning was publicized, investigative wings have been silent on the outcome. He notes that regardless of the outcome, such cases should be updated as they are of public interest, failure to which citizens and stakeholders will conclude that it is a witch hunt against the former ruling Patriotic Front.
The amending of Zambia's constitution has remained a topical issue, as while stakeholders agreed that there is need for constitutional amendments to close all loopholes, they cannot seem to agree on how this should be done. The Zambia Center for Inter-Party Dialogue ZCID in 2018 convened a meeting for all major political parties in Ziavonga to discuss potential constitutional reforms, which also included the separation of powers and judicial independence, as well as freedom of assembly, among other reforms. This saw the setting up of the famous National Dialogue Forum of 2019, aimed at implementing the Ziavonga resolutions and for stakeholders to make submissions in order to reform the constitution. The effectiveness of the National Dialogue Forum was highly questioned, as it saw majority of participants being from the then ruling Patriotic Front, while majority of representatives from the then opposition United Party for National Development UPND stayed away, among other key stakeholders. In June of the same year, the Zambian government released the Constitutional Amendment Bill No. 10 of 2019, which sought to amend the constitution in several ways, some of which stakeholders said were not part of the recommendations from the National Dialogue Forum. The bill was greatly debated, as some alleged that it sought to unfavorably enhance presidential powers and subsequently failed to pass in Parliament in 2021. In an interview, Caritas Zambia Executive Director Mr. Eugene Kabilika says the constitutional amendment process that has been promised in the UPND should have consensus from key stakeholders to avoid going through the same phase.
But in order to do that, there must be transparency from the very beginning to the end. We failed to do that during the previous attempts because we ran away from consensus. Before we reach consensus, others have already moved forward. That was problematic. So this time we must reach consensus before we move to the next step, so that at each step we take, there is consensus by all key stakeholders. That way we won't fail to amend or to enhance the Bill of Rights. Mr.
Kabilika says the process should also be holistic and include the holding of a referendum to enhance the Bill of Rights.
The UPND, during the time they were in opposition, they did allude to the fact that we need to remove the lacunas that are in the Constitution. So removing the lacunas means amending the Constitution. And also there's a big push to make sure that we include the rights, part 3 of the Constitution, which is the human rights. So if we enhance the human rights, it means we'll have to go to a referendum. So we must not be shy to go to the referendum, amend the Constitution, change, enhance the Bill of Rights, and go to referendum. For me, that would be the best way, instead of having this piecemeal, amend this and wait for the part 3 to be done later. That's why we always are caught up with so many things and we do nothing in the end.
The key emphasis from stakeholders has been the upholding of Zambia's democratic tenets, even as the constitution is amended. Zipporah Mshala, Camnet News, Lusaka.
In other news, the Southern African Center for Constructive Resolution of Disputes, SACOLD, says it has taken upon itself to spearhead the validation process for Zambia's constitutional review process as one way of promoting the current administration to kickstart the process. Speaking to Camnet News, SACOLD Executive Director Boniface Kembe notes that while the reforms around the Public Order Act are significantly progressing, overall constitutional reforms have not yet begun. Meanwhile, Governance, Elections, Advocacy Research Services GEARS Programs Coordinator Gideon Musonda, who was one of the stakeholders participating in the meeting, has challenged government to come up with a supplementary budget that will include the overall constitutional review process in 2023, stating that it is sad to note that the process has not been budgeted for in 2023.
The importance of a clearly stipulated constitution in a democratic country cannot be underestimated, as it guides the governance process of a country and ensures that basic human rights are upheld. The process of coming up with a comprehensive constitution in Zambia has, however, not been conclusive, as the process has undergone a few failed attempts due to stakeholders failing to reach a consensus. The United Party for National Development UPND administration, which ascended to office in August 2021, came strong with the promise of ensuring overall constitutional reforms by involving all relevant stakeholders to see reforms that will benefit all citizens. While reforms on the Public Order Act POA are ongoing, the Southern African Center for the Constructive Resolution of Disputes SACOLD says the silence on the overall constitutional review process is worrying, forcing the civil society organization to call for a validation meeting with other stakeholders on Thursday, 10th November 2022, which will hopefully prompt government to start the process. SACOLD Executive Director Boniface Kembe was speaking to Camnet News after the meeting.
Hence us bringing different civil society organizations to deliberate, after which we are going to have a way forward on what is to be done around the constitution making process, that resources be put aside to facilitate for this process, so that once everybody knows how much is on the table, then it becomes a lot easier for different partners to try and chip in where certain resources may be required around constitutionalism.
Stakeholders, among them governance, elections, Advocacy Research Services GEARS Programs Coordinator Gideon Musonda, said the lack of a provision for the overall constitutional review process in the 2023 national budget is disappointing.
So we've not seen any, commitment in terms of serious commitment in terms of the budget, provision for this year. So in short, government has not committed itself, fully to this process in terms of, helping the smooth, process to review this law. So what we would want to urge government probably is to also, push for a supplementary budget that can actually provide for, resources that will support the amendment process of the Constitution.
Others who attended the meeting, including Forum for Democratic Process FODEP Executive Director Elijah Ruvuta and the concerned citizen Ezra Banda, have spoken out.
As you are aware, in the past we've had a number of contentions in the electoral process through petitions, and in some cases, in most cases, the outcome of some of the verdicts have left some aggrieved parties, still not satisfied.
It needs to remove the component of selfishness in the readership, because that document is not for the current readership, it's not for the current government, it's not for anybody, but it's for all Zambians.
The stakeholders feel there is need to reform the constitution a few years before 2026 to ensure that the process is not politicized. Zipporah Mshala, Camnet News, Lusaka.
National Democratic Faction leader Savoy Imboela bounced before the Lusaka Magistrate Court Thursday morning when she appeared for a possible plea as her documents were not before court. Ms. Imboela, who was earlier this month arrested and charged for the offense of libel, was informed that her charge sheet was not before court. Meanwhile, Economic and Equity Party leader Chilufya Tayali's case, where he is accused of beating a police officer, has been adjourned, and Magistrate Stanford Ngobola has set November 29th for commencement of trial in the case in which Dr. Malama 53 and 7 others are jointly charged with willful failure to comply with applicable law and procedure contrary to Section 342B of the Anti-Corruption Act No. 3 of 2012. Ministry of Information and Media Director spokesperson Thabo Kawana has dispelled assertions by Patriotic Front presidential hopeful Chishimba Kambwili that government is in the process of constructing a road around Dagam Ashok area and Ndola Girls Technical School. Earlier this week, Mr. Kambwili told the nation that such maneuvers are a recipe for corruption in an administration that boasts of fighting the scourge. But Mr. Kawana explains that the road being used currently is a temporary one which does not meet the international standard of the Civil Aviation Organization. He further says that the road is already in the design of the airport and not that a new contract was given as highlighted by Dr. Kambwili. Mr. Kawana has meanwhile advised the opposition to consult before misleading the nation on matters of national importance. The director spokesperson was speaking to Camnet TV Thursday.
You've embarked on creating another road parallel to Adana in the same area. This other road only services the school and Dagama Short. And from Dagama Short, 500 meters, kuyafika pageti ya airport. Mwayata mpoku pangatama kiimbi. Spending money, that is not prudence use of public resources. And that project must be stopped.
That is now being made is the one that is in the design, is in the contract. Only that this time around, in order to save resources, the road from Maposa coming on the other side has not been done. It is not going to be done. What is being done is the one that is coming from the Ndola direction, so all of us will have to go through the Ndola direction in order to access the airport. So the bottom line remains that you cannot have a road accessing an international airport that passes through high voltage pylons as the one that is being used currently, where we pass through Dagama Show on our way through to Ndola Girls Technical School. So I want to urge the opposition, and particularly so our brother Kambwili, that he must, before he comes out guns blazing, he must be able to research, so that before you come out and start telling the government to stop, maybe we should also tell you that this system of the opposition coming out with information that they do not have, half-baked assertions and wanting to state them as facts, must come to a stop. So you must stop, Mr. Kambwili. Learn to consult before you come on television to tell people things. Learn to consult so that what you're offering as checks and balances is factual.
In other news, Central Province Minister Credo Nanjua has bragged that Central Province is becoming a stronghold of the United Party for National Development UPND based on the results of the recently held council chairperson and councillor by-elections recently held in the province, which were scooped by the UPND. In an interview, Mr. Nanjua has predicted that come 2026, the district will be a full stronghold of the UPND based on trends. Meanwhile, the minister states that the current administration is determined to depoliticize Mulungushi Textiles in Kabwe by seeing it operationalized, unlike he says has been happening in the past where its revamping had been used to gain political mileage.
Probably is to congratulate my people in Central Province, UPND, the teamwork that we demonstrated in Mukushi by-election, in Luano by-election, and also in Serenge. It is just gratifying to say congratulations to the team. It is a signal that the UPND now in Central Province is really getting bigger and getting organized, and we are looking forward that by the year 2026, Central Province will be a stronghold in full. Of course, we have been a stronghold in full, a stronghold of UPND. As we have indicated, Mulungushi Textile is a game changer for the people of Kabwe and the people of Central Province, because Mulungushi Textile itself, when it is operational, full operation, we are seeing even the farmers benefiting out of that, because Mulungushi Textile will be the uptake of the cotton produced in the province. So more jobs will be created. That's why government is engaged, is committed to engage with the equity partner to ensure that that industry is brought back to life.
You're watching Camnet TV Main News. We take our first set of commercials. We'll be back with more after this.
Your skin is the biggest muscle in your body. That's why we make sure that Oracle is #1 when it comes to taking care of your precious skin. Oracle Pure Petroleum Jelly and Glycerin soothes, moisturizes and keeps your skin perfect. Oracle Pure Petroleum products for that perfect skin.
You know I can take her a bit.
Yes, my dear.
I was thinking of getting you a Bugatti on your birthday. Really? I'm quiet. My name is Yana.
Don't worry, my dear. That's why there is insurance.
Insurance?
You heard me.
Not just any kind of insurance, but Savenda General Insurance, a company that offers superior customer service, highly professional and dedicated staff. We are not just any insurance company, but an insurance company that actually pays our claims. We cover, among others, fire, marine, aviation, engineering, agriculture, motor vehicle, and miscellaneous insurance. So, live life to the full, knowing that Savenda General Insurance has got you covered. Savenda General Insurance. Insurance excellence.
Welcome back. Continue with the rest of the main news. The Secondary School Teachers Union has urged government and other stakeholders to urgently handle issues that may threaten the stay of pupils in schools past the coronavirus pandemic, noting that major achievements in the education sector were taken aback by the pandemic. In an interview, Union General Secretary Situvekiso Wamuyua notes that the factors like teenage pregnancies, early marriages, and the lack of motivation still pose as a threat to education, which is in need of urgent revival. He has therefore urged the Ministry of Education to take a realistic approach to ensure that all children attend an education by making reforms based on current trends, as the world is constantly going through different phases.
The
The sector is recovering quite well, more especially when it is being complemented with the policy of free education that has come. You have seen that the school calendar has normalized. School attendance by pupils is normal, and with the free education policy, you have seen so many pupils who were at one time not able to come to school because of challenges of finances flocking back, and our classrooms are getting overcrowded, which is quite a challenge, but I think it's a better challenge because we have always believed that it's better our children get crowded in our classrooms than to get crowded in the streets or in our compounds. Yes, when you talk about the government paying exam fees for our candidates, yes, it's a commendable job because that is what is in the manifesto, and that's what was presented in the 22 national budget by the minister, that okay, exam fees have been abolished. Not necessarily abolished, but the government takes up the responsibility because now it is the government that makes the payment to the Examinations Council of Zambia, because the Examinations Council of Zambia needs the money to manage and to run the exams. So if the money now is coming from the government on behalf of the learners or the candidates, it's a commendable job, and it will definitely enable a lot of pupils in grade 7, grade 9, grade 12, who were at one time dropping out of school because of inability to pay school exam fees, now write their exams. Yes, I know that there could be other challenges that can contribute to pupils dropping out of school, such things like distance to school, sometimes cultural issues come into play, early marriages, and all these need to be addressed as well.
Acting Secretary to the Cabinet, Patrick Kangwa, has warned that the failure to successfully implement the International Monetary Fund (IMF) program will result in the debt restructuring process to show, and the chance for economic transformation will be jeopardized. Mr. Kangwa also says without the successful implementation of the various programs, the country will lose credibility in the international community, including from private investors. He adds that the country will mostly miss out on the chance to improve public service delivery and to help the Zambian people improve their livelihood. The acting secretary to the cabinet has since advised controlling officers in the country to make the IMF program be part of their everyday operations and not as an activity that falls solely on the Ministry of Finance and National Planning. Mr. Kangwa said this in Lusaka Thursday at the orientation workshop for permanent secretaries on the IMF program and the World Bank Development Policy Operation.
Without successfully implementing the program, debt restructuring will stall, and the chance for economic transformation will therefore be jeopardized. Without successful implementation, we will lose credibility in the international community, including from investors. Further, we will miss out on the chance to help the Zambian people improve their livelihoods. We all know that our core business, as we sit in these positions of high responsibility, is serving the people of this great nation. And this, the President has repeatedly said. Therefore, the foregoing illustrates vividly that failure is not an option. Simply put, failure should not be part of our vocabulary. Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, going forward, implementation of the various benchmarks will form part of the key performance indicators for all controlling and responsible officers.
Zambia is hosting the first ever Innovation Africa Summit on Education and Technology from 16th to 19th November 2022 with a focus on Africa's digital transformation. Speaking at the media briefing in Lusaka Thursday, Education Minister Douglas Siakalima says the platform will provide an opportunity for African countries to look for long-term solutions to investing in digital space. Mr. Siakalima says the COVID-10 pandemic has taught Africa a great lesson that could compel African countries to embrace technology so that service delivery is not disrupted. Meanwhile, Innovative Africa Chief Executive Officer John Glasser says the summit brings the Zambian country opportunities for knowledge and information expansion in the education and ICT sector.
Our expectation, John, for this Innovation Africa Summit, call it selfish or not, is that as a consequence of this summit, we want to move one more step to making Zambia a technology and innovation hub.
Our investment in education is not short-term, but a long-term investment. We are not thinking about where we're going to take this country, especially our education system, in the next 40 years, so that our learners, after graduating, they become competitive in the 21st century. I do understand that Africa learned in the agrarian revolution. It also learned during the industrial revolution. Now we have the digital revolution. So we need to be competitive as a country so that we fit in this digital era.
It is envisaged that this summit will provide an array of information and opportunities for learning to all its participants. As Zambia hosts the Innovation Africa Summit, we are excited to welcome government ministers from across the continent and world-leading companies like Microsoft, Intel, and HP to our country, setting out to be included in the ICT and global economy.
And so on the afternoon of Friday next week, the 18th of November, we'll have a Zambian Youth Innovation session. We have organised a Youth Innovation Hub, which is part of the exhibition there. There'll be 23 young innovators from Zambia showcasing their wares, and half of them will also present on stage. It's not a competition, but it's for them to present, and industry investors will be there as well.
International and sports news coming through right after this commercial.
In our quest to save nations and develop Africa, Savenda is investing in the agriculture sector so as to produce supply for both local and international markets, housing over 12,000 pullets that are nurtured and fed with our locally made stock feed that comes from our own locally grown maize and soya beans, all processed from our recently installed milling and mixing plant. Our over 95,000 layers have an output capacity of over 1,500 trays of fresh eggs per day that are carefully selected and packaged for all the leading stores and supermarkets nationwide. Our greenhouses are fitted with the latest irrigation system, and the seedlings are nurtured to ensure only healthy plants reach the fields. With our deliberate planting schedule, we are better placed to supply constantly without interruption, thus reliable. Savenda Farms is also changing lives of its dedicated workforce drawn from the local community and beyond. So the next time you think fresh and green, think Savenda Farms.
We'll now get into our international item. As Ugandan farmer Bonaventura Senyonga prepares to bury his grandson, age-old traditions are forgotten and fear hangs in the air while a government medical team prepares the body for the funeral. The latest victim of Ebola in the Eastern African nation. Bidding the dead goodbye is rarely a quiet affair in Uganda, where the bereaved seek solace in the embrace of community members who converge on their homes to mourn the loss together. Not this time. Instead, 80-year-old Senyonga is accompanied by just a handful of relatives as he digs a grave on the family's ancestral land surrounded by banana trees. Here's a roundup of international news.
The latest strain of Ebola virus has sparked fears in Kasanda and Mubende, the epicenter of the outbreak in Uganda. Some families cannot digest the agony of losing their loved ones, including their own children. At first, people thought it was a joke, but after getting all the information and hearing of the deaths, and after seeing even bodies, they were very, very wary, and now they have started protecting themselves. We don't have as many naysayers as we used to have, because they are now very scared. The reappearance of the virus after 3 years has sparked fears in Uganda, with the cases now reported in the capital Kampala, as the highly contagious disease makes its way through the country of 47 million people. To some of these victims, contacting the disease was a nightmare never to forget.
When I was sick, at one point I felt like I'm actually going to die. But then I bargained with God. I'm like, God, give me a second chance. But if I go back, I'm not coming back to Mubende. I'm going home. I'm not coming back.
Both Mubende and Kasanda districts have been under lockdown since mid-October with the dawn to dusk curfew. So far, 53 people have died, including children, out of more than 135 cases, according to latest Ugandan Health Ministry figures.
At Ghana's only organic chocolate factory, production is still on, but at a fraction of its capacity. Making these sweet-tasting bars these days has become a bittersweet experience.
Sales in Europe has actually dropped very significantly, so you are forced to then manage with what resources you have. Cost of production has gone so up that we actually plan our productions.
The company fares better than most here because its shareholders can access money from abroad. This food processing plant couldn't survive the crisis. Its machines are gone, and the building itself is up for sale, if a buyer can be found.
It was mainly to preserve the perishables, the raw materials, and also to give employment and to give ready market to the farmers.
Ghana's economic crisis is the worst in generations, pushing many people into poverty.
It's in markets like these where Ghana's economic crisis is felt the most. While people's purchasing power has eroded because of the depreciation of the local currency, food prices have tripled since the beginning of the year. Fuel costs have doubled, and because of that, the cost of transportation has gone up.
Prices of food keep increasing, making it harder for families to feed.
Economists blame this on excessive government borrowing without investing in areas of growth, and that officials aren't responding well to the situation.
Any action that says, I'm ready to face my problems, I'm ready to fix it, I'm ready to make a U-turn from the irresponsibility of the past, what will it do? It will restore confidence.
So, Ghana's opposition is demanding the sacking of the finance minister.
My biggest concern is I don't see any relief inside. I don't see any hope ahead of me. I don't have faith. I don't have trust in Nana-Addo Dankwa.
The government has turned to the International Monetary Fund for help and insists sacking the finance minister in the middle of negotiations will be a mistake.
We expect also to have a staff level agreement with them before the end of the year, so that from next year we can start fully embracing the fund program.
Ghana's economic plight is made worse by a weak production base as existing manufacturers struggle to keep their machines running. Ahmed Idris, Al Jazeera, Accra.
Gunshots were heard during the visit of Nigeria's presidential candidate Atiku Abubakar to Borno State in the northeast of the country, where an Islamist insurgency has uprooted millions. During the rally in the state capital, Maiduguri, the former vice president and presidential candidate promised to restore peace to the region and the rest of the country.
If PDP is elected, we shall restore peace and order in Borno State, not only in Borno State, throughout the country. We reactivate Chad Basin Development Authority so that our farmers can go back to farm, so that we can produce food for our own people, and so that we can also reduce unemployment. And we promise you on that.
Nigerians will go to the polls at the end of February 2023 to pick a new president and vice president.
Let's take a look at what we have in our sports news. The Football Association of Zambia, FAZ, has made progress in the selection of the next CHIPOLOPOLO coach, with 10 candidates making the shortlist for interviews. A panel of experts comprising FAZ representatives, the government and the Zambia Football Coaches Association is currently milling through the candidates. The shortlisted candidates are Avran Grant, Hossam Albedri, Anton Hay, Peter Butler, Sebastian Migny, and Gert Engels. Locals are Wedson Nyirenda and Hona Junza have made the shortlist, with Roberto Blanchi and Goran Stankovic completing the candidates. The CHIPOLOPOLO job fell vacant. The CHIPOLOPOLO coach job fell vacant following the departure of coach Aljosa Asanovic. FAZ has committed to overseeing a highly transparent process from the beginning to the end. This is according to a statement issued to the media by Football Association of Zambia Communications Manager Sydney Mungala. Well, that sports item brings us to the end of Camnet TV main news, but before we go, here are the headlines once again. Over 100 girls restricted from child marriages in NEGA-NEGA. TIZ challenges investigative wings to update the nation on how high-profile corruption. Central Province UPND boasts of taking over the country because of its good policies. And in international news, deaths every day, fear and fortitude in Uganda's Ebola epicenter. And in sports, FAZ shortlists 10 for CHIPOLOPOLO job. Our Camnet verse of the day is coming from the book of Job 37 verse 5 to 6, and it reads, God's voice thunders in marvelous ways. He does great things beyond our understanding. He says to the snow, fall on the earth, and to the rain shower, be a mighty downpour. Thank you for watching. I am Precious Mzea Sakaleji. Pleasant viewing.